Oh, right. Do I need to say that again? Shall I? Yes.
Thank you.
Right. Sorry, slight microphone problem this evening, and it sounds a bit echoey. Anyway, welcome members to this meeting, Local Plan Subcommittee for Monday 13th of October. We don't have anyone in the audience here this evening, but welcome to anyone who's watching via the Council's YouTube channel. Apologies for absence. I have several. Apologies from Councillor Finkin, who has substituted Councillor Diamond, who's not with us yet. Apologies from Councillor Monday, who has not appointed a substitute. Apologies from Councillor Walsh, who substituted Councillor Hooks. And Councillor Parker is running a few minutes late, but will be here. All right, that's that. Declarations of interest. Can I have any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest or other registrable interest relating to items on the agenda having regard to the Code of Conduct or having taken appropriate advice? Please, anyone? Councillor Cunningham.
And Madam Chairman, an over declaration, but I think for transparency it would be appropriate, and to declare regarding the item on transport and infrastructure as Cabinet Member at Essex County Council for highways, infrastructure and sustainable transport. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On registrable interest, sorry,
Yes,
that's what it is now.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Can't see any others, so that's fine. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. We've had 3 sets of minutes sent out for the 24th of September and the 1st and 6th of October. Does anyone have any comments or amendments? Councillor Abbott.
Happy to move them, Madam Chairman, and I did read them through very carefully because obviously the decisions we're making are
There was a
important ones.
lot. Yeah.
And just like to commend officers for having perfectly grasped all our various ins and outs on all those sites.
Yes, thank you. I agree, because we had a lot of speakers. There was a lot of content for all 3 of those meetings. Yeah, thank you. So that's moved by Councillor Abbott. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Butland. And does everybody agree that those 3 minutes are correct? Thank you. Just give me a minute to sign them. Thank you very much. Right, item 4, public question time. We have no speakers this evening. It's the first meeting for a little while when we have not had speakers. So we can move straight on to the first agenda item, which is local plan review, creating better places. This is a policy report, which I think Alan is going to take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the first item is policies contained within the Creating Better Places chapter of the local plan. We have 16 policies in total. The policies and their preamble have been updated to reflect the 2024 MPPF, as well as making some other amendments, as well as factual changes. The first policy, I'd say the slides has the policy text, but if members wanted to talk about the, or had highlighted anything they wanted to speak about with the preamble, if they could sort of bring that to our attention, we can talk about that as well. The first policy is LPP 47. LPP 47, this is the overarching strategic policy for the built and historic environment, and what it does is it outlines the council's approach to how it will deal with applications and how the local plan will deal with anything involving building and the historic environment. The policy does remain largely unchanged, however we have added references to non-designated heritage assets. And this includes non-designated heritage asset includes something like a building included on a local list, and we've also added reference to that local lists can be formulated through the production of a neighbourhood plan as well. So that's the first policy, Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Anna. Members, I meant to say, what I will do, as we go through, if you have any comments on the policies as they come up, if you indicate you'd like to speak, then I'll take the recommendations in a block at the end. Okay. Anybody, any comments on that first one, built and historic environment? No? Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Parker, who's I did say you were running a little late. Right. Yes.
Councillor Parker needs to declare an interest.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Parker, do you need to declare an interest on either of the items tonight?
No, I've no interest to declare.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Alison.
Okay, thank you. The next policy is LPP 48, an inclusive environment. This policy deals with how the local plan will ensure that the environment is accessible to all people, whether they have a disability or if they're older. The policy is unchanged. A couple of parts of the preamble have been updated to reflect changes to the MPPF, and what's happened since 2012, obviously 2024 MPPF has sort of reworded a lot of its sections, so we've had to update the preamble so they actually match. So there's no changes on that policy proposed. If there's any questions on that.
Right. No, I don't see any hands up. Okay.
Right. The next policy is the health and well-being policy. Healthy and active district policy. Several changes have been made to this preamble, again as a result of the MPPF. The MPPF is much stronger now when it comes to limiting unhealthy food options within walking distances of schools. The policy is a little bit more relaxed than the MPPF, because whilst the MPPF doesn't apply a restriction in the town centres, the policy is proposed to allow those food options within town centres, district centres and local centres. The primary reason for this is to enable new strategic growth locations to have a wide range of local services available to them. Essentially we wish to create new viable centres where appropriate. One thing to note from the preamble is the level of obesity in the district has increased quite dramatically since 2017, and it continues to be above the national average. This is part of an ongoing national trend, unfortunately. So the policy has been updated to reflect those MPPF changes.
Yes, all sorts of. Yes, yes.
Thank you. What's the definition of walking distance?
400 metres.
Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are we able to include vaping outlets on this? Because we have a situation in Braintree where a vape outlet is right outside a school. And I wonder whether we might be able to extend it not just for fast food, but for vaping, and well, I would include alcohol outlets as well, in the close vicinity of schools. Are we able to do that?
Sarah.
I think the tricky thing is, so hot food takeaways sit in their own. They're not in a use class, so they're a sui generis use. Whereas a vaping shop is probably just a shop which would be Class E, so or Old A1. But I think in essence we couldn't restrict it in practicality terms, because of the use class would sort of have would make it permissible. I don't think you could, whereas you've got more control over takeaways just because of the way they're classified in use class terms, if that makes sense.
I think it's a good point. Now, I wonder if it's something that government might look at. I don't know. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
I find that difficult, in as much as that takeaway foods and fast food are not healthy. Vaping is even more unhealthier, and we do have a problem in this county at the moment. Like most of the country, with children as young as 7 years old vaping, and the consequences of that are horrendous. So I think if there is a way that we can consider that, it really is important, because it's one of the top subjects on children's health at the
Yeah.
moment. Thank you.
Okay. Alan, did you want to come in?
Just to say that, I mean, the MPPF specifically name checks fast food as being the hot food takeaways and fast food outlets. So that restriction only applies to those. We can't, there's nothing in the MPPF that would allow us to restrict a vaping shop, although obviously it does encourage, you know, healthy lifestyles, things like that. But there's other methods we would have to employ rather than doing a vape shop. Thank you.
I wonder if we might be able to make representations somewhere, just to a higher authority, just to note it. Might be a good idea. Okay.
If an appropriate consultation comes up in the future, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yes. Okay. I think we'll make that.
Could I just ask that we
yes,
don't
Councillor
lose
Buckland.
sight of that, and if we are
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
put in that as an authority, we would look with disfavour upon
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important, particularly when, as I say, we have examples where, or an example, I'm not saying it's the only one because I don't know the whole of the district, but to set it right up outside of school, I think
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
not the sort of thing we would want to encourage.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Ritchie, did you have your hand up to speak? No. Councillor Parker, you did, I think.
Yes, it's just on the 5.31, the open space type of vision and the requirements. Just play space youth, we only require that if we have 250 dwellings or more. Would it be possible to require it as some kind of, require it for 100 or more dwellings? Only that I feel that that they all seem to be forgotten. A lot of play spaces are really aimed at sort of under 10s really, and sort of teenagers always seem to be forgotten. And there are things like, I think they're called muggers, aren't there, that are aimed at older children. I was wondering whether it would be appropriate to lower that threshold.
Alan?
We are still waiting. So that table comes under the next policy, which is LPP 50, provision for open spaces, sport and recreation. That table is subject to change at the moment. We are still waiting on our open spaces evidence base to be completed, and we should be getting that before Regulation 18. So if they have any recommendations on changing the types of spaces available. Now, I think a mugger would come under play space bracket youth. I think that would be what its definition is. But we can certainly look at that, and if there is a particular need or shortage or a particular type of provision, then we can start lowering the thresholds. Or bear in mind that that does sort of need to be factored in when you're considering things like viability assessments for sites as well. So.
Okay. Right. Good. No other comments on that? Right, Alan.
So next one is provision for open space, sport and recreation. So we've had some minor tweaks to it, but again we're waiting for our evidence base to be completed, which should be before Regulation 18. So if there's anything that's come out of that evidence base, we will have to report the policy back to members. So, but for now, there's no major changes proposed to this policy.
Okay. Anybody? Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Because I didn't print everything off in an environmentally sustainable way that you try to be, I think this would also talk to paragraph 530, where it says SUDs can be used as open spaces. Is that the same policy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to flag, as I've done before, I've never been happy with that. I think open space should be open space, and we shouldn't be trying to double up with areas which are designed to be drainage areas for developments. But also, whilst speaking, I'm sure officers have already spotted it, but if you read the paper as it is on the agenda on the screen, in several places there are problems with the text layout. Paragraphs haven't justified, so the words are all spread out across a line. paragraphs 5, 10, 11, 16, 17, 18 and 24, and in places the text is bleeding over into the next section. I'm sure it's because it's a draft, but just to flag that.
Right, yeah, we will.
Yes, we will be getting the local plan properly laid out for the consultation, but there has been unfortunately some formatting issues. But we're trying to get them all, but unfortunately a few have skipped through.
Okay. Right, nothing else on that one then?
Apologies, that was the second half of the policy. Apologies. The third part. So the next policy is the LPP 51 equestrian facilities. Some tweaks have been made to this policy as well. What we are now requiring, or we're proposing to require, is a business plan for commercial equestrian facilities, as well as more detail on the provision of arrangements for any sort of noise, waste, storage and disposal caused by an equestrian facility. It's been noted that not all equestrian facilities require off-road riding facilities. So as per criteria C, we've added a where necessary to that criteria. For example, you might have, I think, a menage, which people may come to with their horse rather than having horses on site. So we've added a where necessary for that. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Parker.
Yes, subparagraph F there. I think it's entirely appropriate to have satisfactory arrangements for waste, storage and disposal, but I don't understand why you feel it's necessary to insert noise, because I have horses and I know a lot about horses, but there generally isn't a noise issue with horses at all, or even lessons, outdoor lessons. So why would we insert a condition reference to noise?
It was added. I think it was one of the responses to our issues and options consultations that we had noise. But I take the point of your point on board there about that might not necessarily be an issue. Perhaps they're also thinking about any associated machinery noise, perhaps. But if you want to remove it, it's up to members. But
Anybody else have any strong feelings on that? If not, I mean, Councillor Bowes-Flint.
The issue I have is if you don't have it in there and then there's a problem, it makes it harder. So, whilst I appreciate that I owners' horses might not make a noise, I can assure you that I am quite close to somewhere that does.
Right.
So, this would cover for the people who do get the noise.
And I suppose it could relate to machinery being used, maybe. I mean, Councillor Parker.
I mean, what noise are we talking about here? Because horses, apart from the odd neigh, don't make a noise. And if you are proposing satisfactory arrangements are proposed for noise from horses neighing, what satisfactory arrangements are you talking about? Because, I mean, it's not possible to stop a horse neighing at another horse.
No. Alan.
I was just going to point out that it could be other. I mean, I said machinery earlier. That could be things like compressors for air conditioning, stuff like that. If a stable has that sort of facility installed to it.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily referring to the animal in particular. It's not like, we know dogs bark and that sort of thing, but it might be, as Alan has said, related activities. Councillor Abbott.
My problem with it is the grammar, Madam Chairman. I suggest it should read satisfactory arrangements are proposed for waste storage, disposal and mitigating noise, or something like that.
Yes.
Because otherwise we are proposing arrangements for noise.
Yes. All right. Actually, that's.
Can't help myself.
No, actually, that. I think that makes sense. Actually. So. Alan, officer, are you happy with that? No. Yeah. I think that's Yeah, and I think it's better to, yes, Councillor Butland.
If you're finished on F,
Yeah.
I'm just interested in G as to why specifically this type of activity has to have a viability and business plan included with any action.
Yes.
Sorry, any application. Yeah.
Yes, Alan, sorry.
I mean, that is to ensure we do have. So the NPPF does allow for use of buildings in the countryside, that sort of thing. So we just want to make sure that when we are considering those applications, we are looking at a viable business use going into the country. It's primarily aimed at commercial, the commercial equestrian facilities, and I think we do look for a similar under other policies as well for rural businesses.
Yeah, yeah. All right, good. Okay, fine. Thank you, Alan. Moving on.
So the next policy is the layout and design of development policy. So there's some additional points which have been added to criteria A, which seeks to have a layout and design to respond positively to the local area. Criteria C, there's been a request from our development management colleagues about taking into account topography when considering overlooking for existing housing. And criteria J, which I think is on the next. Criteria J, which seeks lighting for the security and safety or safety of a development. This point has been raised in response to concerns that developers are not providing any lighting, even when there is a safety or security need to do so. And I think criteria T, which should be the last one, I think.
It's not on our one.
Okay, sorry. Criteria T, that seeks accessible streets, spaces and buildings, so complements the inclusive places policy previously. Okay.
Right, Councillor Parker and then Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. I do have a few comments actually on this policy. Should I take them one by one, Chair,
Yeah.
if it's helpful?
Yes.
So just on, could you clarify for me, just on subparagraph F, what is meant by waste separation, internal and external?
That's recycling, so it's where you separate your paper, plastic, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. And then just on I, hopefully Councillor Abbott might not agree with me on this, but I know we state here landscape proposals should consist of native plant species, but I think sometimes we have obviously a limited palette of native plant species. We also now have to tackle climate change and drought. We have all sorts of requirements from highways of what trees they will and will not accept. We have to think about proximity to people's windows and the issues of light caused by trees. We have to think about fruiting trees and apples or plums or whatever falling on the ground in the autumn and so on. So I just personally think that restricting ourselves always to native plant species is a bit prescriptive, and whether we could add something like where appropriate into the wording.
Okay. Alan?
I think we are through the local plan trying to encourage sort of biodiversity. Native plant species, that has always been a requirement of this policy. It's been examined and been found sound to have that requirement. The details in terms of what trees are appropriate where are usually dealt with through detailed planning applications. So I know highways, they particularly don't like trees that drop fruit, for example, because of the mess it causes, and then they get lots of complaints from people whose car drop fruit in their car, and it gives them a lot of problems. So I think it would be more of a detail matter for an application, for the application level. But I think if members wanted to have a slightly broader definition is just, I suppose, is what we're trying to do here is to sort of encourage native species, particularly if you've got a landscaping, say you've got a development on the edge of a town, and you wanted to sort of not introduce non-native species potentially into a countryside area, that might justify why you would have that native species caveat here.
Okay, let's just see. So Councillor Abbott, you next, then Councillor Bowers-Flint.
Well, I wasn't going to comment on that one, but I will now. I think Councillor Parker actually does make a point, but I wouldn't want to go so far as to say where appropriate, because that tips the balance too far. So whether we could use something like would normally consist of, or something like that. You know, so it comes across that that's what the expectation is, but there may be exceptions. But I mean, I think it's a fair point, particularly this last summer.
Yes.
Now, my main comment was on J. I'm very worried about that change. Basically, what that does on the lighting is the last few words that have been added could be used by anyone to completely negate all the rest of the policy. And that would then leave us in danger of not delivering on our statutory obligation to protect species, for example, or to unreasonably impose amenity impacts on residents. So if that wording needs to go in, I would suggest what we could do is something like the design and level of any lighting proposals for the purposes of access, safety and security, and then carry on with the rest of the paragraph.
Right.
So it still has to. So,
Yeah.
and these days as well. I mean, it's very rarely any development would need to impose impacts if the lighting is designed properly. I mean, there's
Yes.
1,001 different designs. Just as that's worded, it worries me that someone could come along and argue that last line and say, well, we don't have to take account of the neighbours or protected species. Or
Yeah.
do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do. All right. Councillor Bowers-Flint, do you want to come in on something, and then we'll see where we are?
Well, it was back on I, really.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, could we, should we, can we, whatever. Can we include something in there about the maintenance of the trees, i.e. watering? Because I have watched on a development 3 lots of planting all died simply because they have not had a drink. And I find that quite criminal, really, to be honest with you.
Yes, it is a problem. Right. Let me just take Councillor Parker, and then we'll do a bit of a wrap up. Yeah.
Thank you, Judge. I've just got 3 other points I just wanted to raise. On K, the second sentence, the highway impact shall be assessed. Could we just insert the words of the development, because I read that as sustainable modes of transport. The highway impact of sustainable modes of transport should be assessed. It's just a sort of to make it just a little bit clearer. I assume that's what you mean. So that's that point.
Okay.
And then just on Q, single aspect dwellings, 3 or more bedrooms. Would we be happy with having 3 or have 2? Or would we be happy having 3 bedrooms with a single aspect? That seems quite a lot, and probably not necessarily appropriate to a rural place, relatively rural part of the country. And then the other really just was on T. I just didn't feel that to start that sentence with to create really flowed with the rest of the sub paragraphs there, just to word that so it doesn't start with a verb basically.
Right.
Those are my points. Thank you.
So I'm going to give Alan a chance to come back on some of that.
If I work backwards, if that's okay. So to create, I'm quite happy to come up with some alternative wording for that one. next one's Q. So developments should avoid single aspect dwellings that are north facing, exposed to noise category C or D, or contain 3 or more bedrooms. So, I mean, if members wish to go down to two or more bedrooms, I think we would not have an issue with that. Yes, because I think this was aimed at more flatted development rather than rural development. So perhaps we should make that a little bit clearer as well. Say developments, particularly flats, 4 flats, something like that would probably help that clarity. Yeah, I'm happy to put in the point about the highways impact of the development should be assessed. That's perfectly fine. The long-term maintenance of landscaping is covered under criteria L in the policy. So proposals for long-term maintenance of public areas and landscaping are included. So we've got that one covered off. And I think the design and level for the purposes of safety and security, I think we'd be quite happy to add that one in there as well.
That's the lighting.
That's the
one,
lighting
yeah.
point, yes.
Moving the wording from one end to the other.
Yeah.
Councillor Martin, you had your hand up. Try it again. Can you?
Try it again.
No, try it again.
No, it won't.
Okay, hang on. We'll give you a different one.
But not red. In fact, it's not working at all now.
Oh, now it is.
Oh, it's on. No, it's still not. That's it. Thank you very much.
There we
Right,
go.
okay, yeah. No, I wanted to query Q as well. So, avoid single aspect buildings, dwellings, what does that actually mean then? Single aspect dwellings, so is that one person dwellings?
That means a building that just faces one direction. So if you've got a block of flats and you have one flat in the middle of that block and it's only looking one way.
I'm with you on that. And then all contain 3 or more bedrooms. So I just want to query, does that mean that you're trying to have smaller dwellings rather than larger dwellings? Is that what that means? So you want 1 and 2 bedrooms and not 3 or more bedrooms? Is that what it means?
Yeah, in terms of you typically where you accept single aspect flats are, you know, where they're not north facing, so you'd normally try to put a single aspect flat which is east or west rather than north because of where the sun goes.
Yeah.
And then yes, typically flats tend to be 1 or 2 beds rather than 3 bed.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that's what that is aimed at. There's also when you're dealing with sort of single aspect dwellings, I think a 3 bed is typically occupied by a family, so you might accept it on a 1 bed sort of starter rather than a 3 bed, and you know generally you'd want respite that you get from other aspect, but in reality I think it's that flats you typically have smaller units anyway.
Yeah. Can I come back on that? Is that
Yes,
okay?
of course,
Yeah, I agree. And what I want to say is that we are supposed to be looking at smaller dwellings and not larger dwellings because, you know, we have got large properties that people can't afford, and we've got lots of single people, particularly men, but lots of single people who are on the housing list, and we do need smaller properties that are affordable. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Point noted. Okay. Right. Anybody else on that particular policy? No? Right. Okay. Good. Thank you, Alan.
So the next policy is on conservation. So it's this policy, I'll just take these in one go because it's LPP 53, 54, 55, 56, conservation areas, demolition in conservation areas and shop fronts in conservation areas. So none of these policies have been proposed for any sort of changes. The preamble has been updated to reflect changes to MPPF and the number of heritage assets we have. So just quickly flick through if you just can see if we've got any comments about the first policy or not. Just want to flick through.
No?
No.
Okay.
Next policy, demolition and conservation areas. Again, unchanged. This was quite a detailed policy with the shop fronts and faces policy, but we haven't proposed any changes on this one. I think that's that one. And yeah, finally, illuminated signs in conservation areas obviously carry forward from the previous local plan, so, and hasn't got any changes proposed to it.
Okay. Right. Any comments? Don't see anything? No? Okay, I think we can move on to heritage assets.
Yeah, so this is LPP 57, heritage assets and their settings. Again, this has been updated, the preamble for number of heritage assets as well as NPPF, changes to the NPPF. However, the body of the text is, has remained unchanged.
Councillor Abbott.
A grammatically correct typo, Madam Chairman. Paragraph 552. Heritage assets should be conserved in a manner, spelt as in castle manor.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well done.
It's quite a
well
good one, I think.
Well spotted, yes.
You stab him as a proofreader.
Noted and will be corrected.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right. Good.
It was nice though.
Yeah, it's it's appropriate. It is appropriate, yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, nothing else on that one.
The next policy, so this is LPP 58, demolition of listed buildings or structures. Again, it's not proposed to have any changes to this policy. Normally, Historic England would be heavily involved in any proposal that involved something like this. So we're not proposing to change the policy at this time.
Okay. No comments on that one. Right.
Next one. Right, so this is unchanged as well. Archaeological evaluation, excavation and recording. This used to be two policies, one in the 2005 local plan, but was put into one policy. So there's no main updates to it, although I think the minor update is required at para 5.55 to just update the historic environment record number of assets we have. Thank you.
Okay. No comments. Right.
So next one is education establishments. So this is where we're looking to protect and provide and protect existing education facilities. There's been sort of one change to that policy, and that is to allow not just for the creation of new facilities, but for the extension of existing facilities. This has been put in the request of Essex County Council. Okay.
Right, Councillor Bowers and then Councillor Parker.
Just a grammar point in 5.6 on the, was that on the preamble of this one? Yeah, where it says meet the needs of existing new communities. It just doesn't read right. Of new communities or existing a new, just says need to exist in new communities. It just doesn't read right.
Oh, okay. Have you got that, Alan? Yeah. Did you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fine. Councillor Parker.
Actually, it's on the same sentence but a different grammatica. So I can't believe I missed the one that Councillor Bowers just mentioned. But that same sentence, I think there have been a couple of words that should have been deleted. So great importance should be placed on the need to provide sufficient choice of early years school and post-16 places. And then the words are available should be deleted.
Yep, okay. Okay. Right. Okay, good, thank you. Right, that's that, I think. On to the next one.
So this policy is on local community services and facilities. It seeks to protect and retain those facilities where there is an identified need for them. We've had a couple of changes in policy, including to specify a required marketing period of 12 months and also to allow for the removal of permitted development rights when a facility is changed to residential uses, which generally updated the remainder of the policy as well.
Councillor Bowers.
Yeah, on one, I presume it is for a period of at least 12 months rather than at least 12 months.
Right, okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Parker.
Just a small point, just right at the end of that, the list of community facilities. So C is Butler Road House. There's no A or B, I take it, is there? And should that then just become... Oh, I see. Okay. Yep, fine. Thank you.
Okay. Nobody else? No? Okay. Right.
So the next policy, again, it's an unchanged policy. This is on cemeteries and churchyards. Basically, the local plan identifies existing cemeteries and churchyards on the inset maps and seeks to retain and protect them. And there was an additional requirement for a cemetery at Great Barfield, which has been just carried over from the previous local plan. Thank you.
Councillor Bowers, Flint.
It's not on that particular policy, Madam Chairman, but Sarah most probably knows what I'm going to say. I'm a little bit disappointed that we haven't included in there about children's homes, especially with going into a unitary authority when it will be the unitary authority's responsibility for children's home. And what I'm trying to achieve across the county at the moment is to, when there's planning permission put in for a children's home, and bear in mind now children's homes are looking at just 3 or 4 bedroom houses, so it could be anywhere, could be an existing house or anything, that the allocation of those bed spaces are given to children of Essex rather than any child, because we have, at the moment, we have more children taking bed spaces up from out of this county, and we at times even have to move our children out of the county to other counties. So I think with the future being as it is, if we can look at that and consider that, because it will be important going forward, because obviously there's a big cost here, and the placements are the thing that's throwing the children's services cost over the roof, basically. But it's something for us as a district turning into a unitary that we really should be looking at possibly sooner rather than later, when it's going to cost the unitary authority an awful lot more money. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, Sarah?
Yes, I think it's just a more question of where in the local plan it would go, and I think it probably goes in the housing chapter along with affordable housing and types of housing. So I haven't forgotten, and we will look at it, but it's not in this chapter.
Right, okay. Well, that hopefully gives you a bit of reassurance it's not been forgotten. Okay. Right. So that was the last one. Right. Okay. So, members, good discussions on those. The recommendations are on page 5 of the agenda. It's quite a long list, so I'm not going to go through them. Just to note, we have got some amendments on equestrian facilities, rewording on point F, some changes on layout and design, quite a few changes there. I can go over them if you like, but otherwise I think officers have noted them. Heritage assets and settings, there was some spelling and grammar correction. educational establishments, spelling and grammar correction, and the same with local community services and facilities. Have I missed anything? Have I got them all right? So, with those changes in mind, could I have somebody to move that we accept? Thank you, Councillor Asflint. Seconder, please, Councillor Abbott. And a show of hands that report's accepted. Thank you, members. That's unanimous. Good. Right, so we move on to agenda item 6, which is local plan review, transport and infrastructure policies.
Thank you very much. This chapter is a bit shorter than the other one. This chapter, we're looking at transport and infrastructure, so that's things like parking, new roads, and infrastructure like broadband. Again, there's been a number of NPPF changes, including a focus now more for promoting sustainable travel options, as well as modal shift to achieve active and sustainable travel and travel patterns. The first policy is LPP 42. This is sustainable transport. This policy has had a couple of minor updates, including a reference to car clubs, which has been added. However, the preamble has been extended to include other things such as transport assessment and travel plans. Okay.
All right. Any comments, members? Councillor Cunningham.
Last week we had a series of a good debate, but some difficult decisions were made over whether King's Dean should be allocated in the Emerging Local Plan Refresh for Reg 18 consultation. And obviously that has quite understandably caused great concerns in the locality. One of the things I think we made the point quite strongly about was the need for some sort of mitigation on the A12. I'm just wondering, acknowledging that the overall scheme has been cancelled, but there may still be some opportunities to get some mitigations in place, and obviously we'd like to see them in our part of the world, in the Kelvedon Fearing area. Is there anything we can do to beef up the wording of this policy document that acknowledges we are in a very different place with the A12, apart from the fact that it's just been cancelled, thank you, good night, to really align with our statements that actually if you are going to have housing along the A12, you're going to have some sort of mitigation. Is there anything else we can put in there, do we think, please?
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Point well made. Officers, Jim?
Yeah, I think we can add reference to the need, for improvements to the road. Obviously, buses also use roads, don't they? So I think that would be appropriate. Although the message from government is quite clear that they are looking at modal shift as their priority moving forward in the future. How realistic that is a little bit debatable. So, yeah, I think we could probably add a sentence in there, perhaps supporting the provision of new road infrastructure where it helps provide sustainable transport options or something like that could potentially be beneficial.
I think that would be helpful. Councillor Cunningham, do you want to come back at all?
I think in terms of the sustainable transport bit, yes, I think that would be enough and helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good. Councillor Parker and Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to clarify, so there is quite a long list of what development proposals should provide. Is that going to apply to all proposals, all development proposals, even very small ones? Or will that be, the requirements be adjusted through the development management process?
Yeah,
they would be adjusted depending on the scale. I wouldn't expect most of these to be done for us as single dwelling applications. So.
Okay, right. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just on picking up on the point on 4.146 around a travel plan. With regards to sustainable travel, particularly by a viable bus network, not just around towns, but also into our villages as well. And also noting that 4.1.39 mentions that it should be available not just during the day and weekdays, but during the evenings and into rural areas where availability of public transport can be limited. Is it worth having something in there that that makes a reference to long-term funding of a bus provision to ensure that any future developments and those in the rural areas are and can have access to vital bus links to get to towns?
Okay. Yep, Alan?
I believe there is a limit to actually how much we can ask, so I think it's usually some forward funding. I think we said 5 years. We can't really ask for anything beyond that, unfortunately.
Okay, right. Nobody else on that one? Okay, we move on to parking provision.
So this is the parking provision policies. It's had one minor change to it, and that's the removal of the reference to Albert Road car park, as that is now being identified as a draft housing site. So no other major changes are proposed to this policy.
Yes, Councillor Parker and then Councillor Bowers.
So in that list, there's a reference to the rear of Village Hall, Little Yeldham. I can assure you there's hardly any car park there at all. I think that should come out. And there are much bigger car parks in some other village halls, so I think that ought to be removed. But just generally on station car parks, I think when we had the discussion about Albert Road, I think I was assured by officers that there would be a car parking strategy, or rather a assessment of car parking availability. I actually do park in that Albert Road car park, and whenever I park there, which normally after 9 o'clock, there seem to be quite often about 150 to 200 cars parked there. I do think that if we are, and I also noticed in the preamble there was a reference to reducing the size of the Kelvedon car park. If we are going to be encouraging people to use sustainable transport, of which trains are number one, and very important, especially for all those people in the district who commute either to Chelmsford or Colchester or into London, it's absolutely vital that we have places for them to park. I do think that in the last few years, post-pandemic, there was a trend to work from home, but that is definitely coming to an end. And I certainly know that, for instance, at Marks Tay car park, sometimes that car park is now full. So I am concerned that we are going to allow station car parks to be reduced or built on without having done a proper assessment of whether they really are needed. Thank you.
Right, I'll take Councillor Bowers next, I think, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of points. In regards to the wording at the bottom of the policy, where it mentions about if we was looking at, or anyone who's owning these car parks were looking at alternative uses, it references about sort of re-providing an equal or better position to serve that main use. Is that even if there was evidence of an underutilisation of a car park? So if someone was coming forward with a change of use for something else because of the underutilisation of that car park, is that not taken into consideration? And a second point is, I know this is in line with Essex vehicle parking standards, but when we're talking about sustainable transport as we move forward, and connectivity and the potential future of someone coming off a train and having an e-scooter there and getting onto an e-scooter, is that covered by cycle parking, or is that something different that we need to take into consideration as we move forward with that, them sort of new ways of working?
Okay, right. Alan, yeah.
Right, I believe the scooter point, that would be in addition to cycle parking. We don't set the cycle parking, all the parking standards at Braintree Council level, so we are dependent on the County Council at this time to actually provide us those standards, and when they next review them, perhaps they'll probably be a good idea if they take that into account when coming up with new standards. and for proposals for alternative use of the above. So that's only this site's included in the criteria list. If a site was underutilised, then I could probably see a case that you wouldn't be able, it would probably be unreasonable to provide equal or better, a better position to that service. I think this, the wording there is unchanged from the last local plan, but I can see how it could be improved.
Yep. Right, Councillor Bowers. Yep.
Just for clarification, I'm not asking that question as responsible for finance assets or car parks in this district. It was just a generalisation in regards to that, just to make that clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Right, hold on. Lots more hands going up. Right, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chairman. Allow me to come back. Could I get an answer to the question? Is there going to be any study done on the capacity for station car park that is needed in this district for all residents in the district, including not just obviously the ones who live in the towns where there are station car parks, but the people who live beyond who use station car parks?
Yep.
Nothing's programmed in for a car park study for this local plan. We are obviously our highways modelling work and transport work is currently ongoing at the moment, and if that came up with any concerns, I think it was probably something we would have to look to in future on car parking. So.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Parker, do you want to come back?
I do think it's a really important point, because we do want to encourage people to use trains and not to drive, but they're not going to be able to use a train if they can't park their car at the station car park. And I do remember once there was one friend of mine who actually ended up having to drive into London because she could not find anywhere to park. This was pre-pandemic, but she couldn't find anywhere to park right up to Chelmsford. So it is really important that we understand what is the need for station car parking.
Right, Sarah, I think wants to come back on that point.
Well, there's a question around deliverability here, because a lot of the station car parks are on operational land. So although we could say that they're deficient if we had an evidence base to do so, we can't make Network Rail build the car park facilities. So it's what's needed to support the local plan, really, in terms of, and we can't make Network Rail extend their car parks. They tend to come in with proposals when they've got excessive demand, but yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Major, I'm not actually asking for that. I'm asking, are we going to be doing a study? Because we are actually, there are two car parks. We are either one car park we're going to be removing, another car park apparently is going to be reduced in size. So
there are other policy wording where we're looking at the redevelopment of car parks, where there would be a requirement in bringing that site forward for a car park study. I think that's in next week's agenda, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong. So we will do it on a case-by-case basis where that is happening, but I think in general terms, there's a question of what we can control here.
Right, I've got several other people want to speak, but I think Councillor Parker raised a question on Yeldham, on the rear of Village Hall, Yeldham.
We could remove that. It does seem to be a little bit strange to have it.
Yeah, okay, yes, all right, good, happy with that. Right, then I've got Councillor Cunningham next, I think.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question on parking capacity and things. And if there is going to be an assessment done, presumably you have to take into account Bewley Park Station, which is opening later this month, which I think is going to have a profound change in terms of our station usage and car parking. I know it's deliberately not being called a parkway station, but actually if you look at all the car parking provision around there, I think by default that's what it's going to turn into. So that might just be worth taking into consideration, because that's obviously going to impact certainly on Hatfield Peveril and certainly probably on Whittam as well, I would have thought. Yeah.
Okay. I know I've got Councillor Abbott. Was there anybody else from that? Right, Councillor Abbott next, please.
Thank you. Many moons ago, when I was on the county council, I did and was covered Whittam, the centre of Whittam and the railway station. I did try and get the county council to look at a comprehensive study of parking and circulation patterns in that area. I mean, it remains the most congested part of Whittam, and with the recent roadworks, it's been, I mentioned it at the previous meeting, almost like the whole of Whittam Town Centre has almost been like a giant car park, barely moving for quite long periods of time. So the point is well made, but I'm wondering if, I mean, I personally, I would support housing at Albert Road, and I said so previously, subject to that not causing further problems. So I'm wondering if that last paragraph can be reworded to something like, you know, where the evidence supports, or something like that, which would come back to the point about having a study. So I think that sort of could get around that. But on M, where do we actually stand now with the rail authorities? Because they've paused, haven't they, all work on the car park extension? I mean, is the planning permission still extant? Have they said definitively whether they're going to go forward with it or not? Because they did have grand plans for a multi-storey car park and all sorts there. But last I heard, it had all stalled.
I've not had any updates on that.
No, we don't. No, we don't have any update on that, I'm afraid.
So do we just leave it in on the basis it might happen?
Well, yes, I think that's probably
Okay.
a sensible thing to do. I've got Councillor Martin next, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. In my previous life as a councillor, I was involved with the development of the Maltings Lane development in Whittam. And at that time, it was the largest development, new development of the town, the furthest away from the railway station. And as part of those plans, it was all designed to reduce car use. And so the dwellings were had limited parking space. So the idea was to discourage more than one car per house. And it has this spine road round it, and the whole reason for that was the plan was to have a shuttle bus, a commuter shuttle bus, because it was the furthest estate we'd got from the railway station, and that was all in the plans, that there was going to be this shuttle bus that went round the estate, picked up people to take them to the station and bring them back in the evening, and to be used for schools as well, and anybody else who wanted to get into town on it. And, you know, the estate was built, but the buses never came. And it was, you know, it is still a problem in getting enough buses for that area of the town. So, you know, is there anything that we can do where, you know, housing developments are built and we can tighten up so that they have to work with the bus companies to provide alternative transport? Because the more car parks you have at a railway station, the more cars are going to be attracted to it, and the more the roads are going to be congested. You've got to look at other alternatives, car sharing and buses, in order to get people to the railway station.
I'll ask officers to
Thank you,
comment. I
Chair.
suspect the point about buses on new developments is something that will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis when applications come forward. But Sarah, you...
Yeah, typically with a large-scale new development, you would have a sustainable transport contribution, which goes to the county council for the county council to spend in terms of bus provision. So that is the way the system is working, although I accept that it doesn't always deliver specifically as people would like.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
Thanks very much. Sorry, I prolonged the conversation too much about car parks. I totally appreciate the points Councillor Martin has made, but the problem is I think with a lot of these they rely initially on the developers' contributions, and of course when they run out, bang goes the service, and or the service gets hugely reduced. We've seen so many unfortunate examples of that. But just speaking about the car parks, now Station Car Park Whittam, Station Car Park Extension, these are the car parks that are currently owned by the Car Park Road. This isn't including Eastern Road, the Braintree District parking. Now, where those car parks are located, are they in the conservation area? I'm just wondering, is there a potential for, if we are concerned about future capacity for decking, the car parks like you see at places like Shenfield, Ingatstone and other places along the line? Just wondering.
I do not know off the top of my head, but I'm going to find out. I don't think it is.
Yeah, I would just say that if they're on operational land, the railways have quite a lot of permitted development, so deck car parks don't always require permission, particularly if they're not in the conservation area. So there's this sort of limit to what we can control.
Okay. Yep.
That may answer the capacity problem in the future, though. That's the thing. Yeah, potentially.
Okay. Right. Okay. I think we can move on. Transport-related policy areas.
Right, thank you. So this policy, transport-related policy areas, relates to the areas around Galleys Corner and Panner's Roundabout, Braintree and Cressing, which are basically restrict those areas to a series of transport-related uses which are set out in the policy. The preamble has been updated in line with the MPPF just to state that the function of a roadside service is to support the safety and welfare of the road user, and that should be sort of the priority when providing these sorts of services and facilities. So as I said, no major changes proposed to policy. Is there any comments on it?
Councillor Abbott.
Well, I'm tempted to say, Madam Chairman, so I will, that on page 47, what went wrong with the policy? Because Galleys Corner, I mean,
Nursery?
you know, there's hardly anything there which fits with what's actually been built. The light pollution, the traffic congestion, the lack of connectivity, the lack of energy efficiency, the minimal planting. I mean, why? I mean, I suppose it's too big a question to ask tonight. But why haven't we delivered? Because I remember the same or very similar conversations were at the last local plan and the one before that. So I suppose the question is, why hasn't the policy delivered a better outcome than what we've got?
Yes, that's a big question. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
I think I can answer that because it's never been introduced since it was built, because that was my argument right from the first day. Bricks were set and permissions were given that, in my opinion, nothing that is there is transport related. How can a children's nursery be associated with that? It's absolutely crazy. And the other thing that I was waiting for Councillor Abbott to say, but he hasn't yet, but I'm sure he'll agree with me, that Galleys Corner isn't between Braintree and Cressing. Galleys Corner is in Cressing. Because Cressing actually goes the other side of that roundabout. Yeah? Thank you.
Councillor Bowers, and then Councillor Coleridge.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. What are we classing as the site area? Because is it just Galleys Corner, as it reference Galleys Corner between Braintree and Cressing, which we know is it's just Cressing? Because when it's referencing about buildings should not normally cover 20% of the site area, what is the site area and what percentage are we at the moment?
Okay.
So
Yep.
the area is defined on the inset map, so there is a site-specific allocation in terms of the building coverage. So it should not normally cover more than 20%, as the policy says. We don't know at this time what the current coverage will be, but I would have to come back to you on that one if you wanted a more precise figure.
Okay. Yep. Councillor Bowers.
And just following on from the points that have been made by the previous two speakers, I don't want to say what's the point of these policies if we're not implementing them, but it does seem a bit just words on a bit of paper on a document if we are then not following through, and then because we're going to be sitting here next week looking at an application, not an application, but an allocation
yeah.
for a strategic site just by Galleys Corner, when Galleys Corner is the issue. And we've got to the situation with Galleys Corner being an issue because we're not implementing our own policies, what it seems like. So it was I'd just like some reflection on why is it going to be different going forward when it hasn't been for the last how many years when it's actually been part of policy. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Do you want to come back on that?
I think I'll just say that the issues around Galleys Corner are not solely on the provision of services around it. I think that is generally traffic increases over the years. So the policy, I think, it was intended to try and control development. Obviously, there's debatable as to how successful that was. But moving forward, I think it would be a good idea to retain some sort of policy on this site just to control any future sort of redevelopment of it. And whether, I think the uses set out in the 3 bullet points at the bottom do generally reflect what is currently on there. And I don't think we would be wanting to encourage anything else really to that location at this time. So.
Okay. Councillor Coleridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry if I'm being naive. Is there a reason why we don't mention the A12 in this policy area? On the basis, we've had quite a few people over the last few weeks mention issues with the A12 in Hatfield, Peveril, Kelvedon, Witham, Rivenhall, all affected by the non-delivery of improvements. And actually, they're probably as much of a pinch point there as on the A120.
Yeah.
This is a site-specific policy, so it only relates to two sites on the A120. We don't have any transport-related policy areas along the A12 at this time, so we wouldn't refer to the A12 in this context of this policy.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Coleridge. Yeah.
Sorry, as a follow-up, could we consider a policy area around the A12, or is that a substantial piece of work?
That would be a site-specific allocation. I think we might have had one site put forward for some sort of service station type use just south of the A12 at Witham. Members did reject that one because of concerns about highways access, but we haven't had any more specific transport-related policy area requests along the A12.
Okay. Right. Councillor Bowers.
Just to come back on what we were talking about earlier, then, as we know that Galleys Corner is solely in Cressin, does that need to be amended to Galleys Corner in Cressin rather than between Braintree and Cressin? But I'm not completely aware of the site, whether some of that, but because the other side of the roundabout is within Cressin itself as the parish, does it just need to reference Galleys Corner in Cressin?
What do we think?
Well, I think it is located between the built area of Braintree and the village of Cressing, so I think you have to go through Galleys Corner from Braintree to Cressing to get, and vice versa. But it's just how it would be named. It wouldn't really materially affect the policy. It's shown on the map as to where it is.
Get the feeling that some members feel quite strongly that it needs to be amended. Yeah, Councillor Bowers-Flint.
Well, perhaps I feel strongly because I've lived there all my life,
I know.
and I get that. However, what Alan is doing is falling into the trap that the businesses there have done, and they give their address always as Braintree and not Cressin, when in actual fact it is in Cressin. And it's Cressin the other side of the roundabout, it's Cressin into the first road the other side of the roundabout, and it's not Braintree until you get to Chelmer Road. So everything about that and around it is in Cressin. But I'm more passionate because I've lived there, but Councillor Abbott is the ward member, so I'll leave it to him.
No, I would agree with that. I think we have the same issue with Rivenhall, don't we? That I keep bringing up, that geographically we need to be accurate as to what parish it's in. So I would agree with that. I think the wording needs to reflect that. It could still, maybe we need a few more words, but I think it does need to identify correctly where it is.
Thank you. Okay, I think officers are saying that that's okay. Is everybody, I'm not asking for a show of hands, but just generally, does people feel an amendment might be good? Okay, all right, fine. If there's nothing else on that one, we've got one more to go, or two more actually. Right, yep, new road infrastructure.
Yes. So this is the new road infrastructure policy. So LPP 45. It's been updated to include a reference to the A120 Route D option, and again we've removed the reference to Cut Throat Lane and Albert Road cut through. So that's the only two changes proposed to that policy. Obviously, as clarity about what may or may not happen from the A120 becomes more apparent, we may have to revisit that, but as it stands, we've decided to include that. We'll most likely also include the Route D option on the inset maps as well as a safeguarded zone. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. Before that, on page 48, it talks about paragraph 4.157, the A12 widening DCO. Do we not need to add the defined date for the expiry of the DCO? Because there is a, I mean, in planning terms, that would have, I'd imagine be quite, was it 5 years, I think, from a date in 2024? And then, potentially controversially, but really it's a technical question. Who prefers Route D? Because I thought the National Highways and the government hadn't said it's their preferred route. I thought it was preferred by Essex County Council, and that therefore technically it doesn't have the status of a preferred route.
The Route D option, that was the highways, county highways preferred option, is also the only route option we've been provided an extent with, so we don't have shape files of the other options. So we were just going on the basis of what the county council have put forward as their recommended.
So I think I answered the question. It's not therefore a preferred route. A preferred route is something that comes from the authority delivering it, which in this case is National Highways. So they would need to say it's their preferred route for us to call it a preferred route. I don't think technically we can call it that.
Councillor Cunningham, do you just want to come in there?
I totally appreciate everything that Councillor Abbott said. My understanding is, and obviously we're straining the memory a little bit, when the route went in, it was the route that was given consideration by government. So when the conversations were had by government on the A120, I don't believe it was on any other route. It was on that. So when we were speaking to ministers and doing all the lobbying and everything that went on over a long period of time, and when we got minister endorsement as well, remember that from a transport minister, yes, he was going to be our advocate. My understanding that all those comments were around Route D. But in terms of technical accuracy, I think perhaps maybe Councillor Abbott is right that National Highways didn't say it was Route D. It's just all the talk was around Route D. So I don't know how we square that circle, and I think perhaps Councillor Abbott, in terms of technicalities, is probably spot on.
What do we think, officers?
So just for clarity, we're talking about the wording in paragraph 4.158. Yeah. Okay. We'll look at that wording.
I'm just thinking when it gets to examination, and I might be there causing trouble, the inspector will want to know if that is the preferred route.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Councillor Cunningham. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So just repeating the points Councillor Coleridge made, and the sort of probably more relevant the point I made a bit earlier on sustainable transport. Any scope for putting anything in there a lot around new A12 junctions, or if we, again, just an opportunity just to beef up the policy a little bit there?
I think we can take that question away and ask the Highway Authority.
Good. Okay. Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, and then just one further point, well, two further points. I'll say what I said before. I think it is the right decision to delete the link road through to Cutthroat Lane Albert Road. So I support that. But also there's another typo just at the end there. It says plan ... a new road. I think that plan shouldn't be there. The word plan.
I think that's formatting, so it's allocated the local plan, and then there's an erroneous bullet point.
Okay. Right. Okay. Councillor Bowes-Flynn.
Just to say that I wholeheartedly, fully support, and anything else support, the new road connecting Springwood Drive with Penfield Lane, because that is a constant headache. Thank you.
Yes, point well made. Councillor Coleridge.
Sorry, just to elaborate on Councillor Cunningham's point,
Yeah.
could a specific reference be made, if possible, to the Malden Road bypass out of Hatfield Peveril, please?
It would would certainly be aspirational, I think, rather than anything. I mean, I can see there is a case, I think, to provide a bypass. Unfortunately, it would have been a lot easier with the A12 junction proposed between Hatfield, Perivale and Witham. But I think if we want to include it, we could do, but unfortunately when we get to examination it's a case of proving to an inspector that it's actually a viable prospect within the lifetime of the plan.
But we could put it in, yeah, I mean,
See
I
what
guess we've
happens
got
if
nothing
it-
to lose. Right, okay, fine, good. Councillor Parker.
Yes, just with reference to the Housestead bypass. So the route on the red line on the map currently goes right the way round, 3/4 of the way round Housestead, connecting the A131 and the A1124. Is that section really necessary to be on the proposals map still? I don't know whether there is still a desire to have that section built. I actually am not sure it's really necessary. And obviously it does actually, having these sort of things on maps does cause a bit of sort of planning blight for people who are worrying about, thinking about whether they should buy houses and so on, or whether they're able to sell houses. So are we still wanting, is that still an aspiration to deliver that bit, or should it be removed?
Alan?
I think we could probably remove that small section. We don't have any housing proposals of sufficient scale to deliver that last part, so we could certainly cut it back to what we can secure during the life of the plan.
Okay. Right. Good, okay, members. Last one, broadband.
Councillor Martin.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin, I do apologise.
No problem.
Right, this second road access to Witham Station car park from Station Road, I just want to clarify. I know I walk on it myself every day, but I'm not 100% sure whether that is Station Road that I'm thinking about. If it is, that is just going to make it so dangerous. It's already such a dangerous junction when you come out the station and walk down the road with school children coming off the train. In the mornings and the evenings, it's a horrendous place to cross the road now. So if it is the place that I think it is, it's going to make it far, far worse. And what we really need is where Cyprus Road comes to a blunt end, it was supposed to carry on and provide access to the A12. And whether it's obviously never happened, but that would have been an ideal solution for people in the north of Witham. So I'm a bit concerned about crossing out this Cutthroat Lane, Albert Road link and putting in something that, from my point of view, where I see the crowds coming on and off the trains, going across Station Road, if that is the road I'm thinking it is, it's just going to be, it's already a very, very dangerous area. It's going to make it worse.
Alan?
To say that any sort of road proposal like that would be subject to a highway safety audit, so they wouldn't be able to put in something that would, significantly worsen a safety situation.
Well, could I just come back there then? Could we put in something where that area, where you go over the railway bridge, so whether you're going over the railway bridge into the station or whether you're going over the railway bridge away from the station, where Collingwood Road goes into the Avenue and Avenue Road, that is an absolute nightmare for people to cross now. So if we're looking at more turnings into the station from that area, whether we are or whether we're not, could we put in something where, as part of new infrastructure, that junction could be improved, because it is just so dangerous at the moment?
Councillor Abbott, is that on that point? Do you want
Yes,
to comment on
so I
that?
think we're slightly at cross purposes here. Station Road is the one near Baird's Maltings. It's on the other side of the station. I think where Councillor Martin's talking about is Eastern Road.
Fair enough.
I totally agree with her though, and that is exactly the area I said when I was county councillor a decade ago. I did try and get the county council to do a full audit of that, because she's quite right to say it. But yes, what we're talking about is that little stub of road that goes almost up to Bears Maltings. That's
I
where
see.
Station Road is.
Okay. Right. Yeah, Alan.
Perfectly correct. There is a route marked on the inset map which shows the connection, the Station Road connection coming out the back, so the opposite end.
Right. So are we saying we need to put something in or not? No.
I mean, there is a route shown on the inset.
On the internet map.
on the inset.
Okay.
Well,
Right.
if we could put in about improving that area at the top of the avenue and Avenue Road, it should have been, I agree with Councillor Abbott, it should have been done years ago. And as that station becomes more and more busy, it is so dangerous there, trying to cross the road on the way to the station and on the way back towards the town centre. It is very, very dangerous indeed.
Don't know if we can. Right. What?
This is a policy primarily about new road infrastructure rather than
Right.
safety
So-
for you.
Probably not.
Okay.
Not for this bit
Yeah.
right now. Okay. Right. Good. Moving on to broadband.
This is the last policy, I think. Right, so again, broadband policy has been updated, primarily through references to the more recent technology. The policy should be noted that we might not be requiring this policy in future. It seems to be the case that most developers are actually providing broadband facilities on new developments as standard. So it may come out between regulation 18 and 19. The only concern we may have, however, is obviously small-scale rural developments. So this policy would still help protect those. So we're keeping it in for now, just to sort of gauge views on the policy, but that could change later. But yes, that's the only major changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a sore point in some of our more rural areas. Councillor Bowers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, just a couple of points. Is there 5G mobile connectivity in the whole of the district? So does that need to be, and 5G mobile connectivity where available? And also, I presume the third line from the bottom should be next generation access compliant rather than complaint. I presume that.
Oh, Councillor Abbott, you got one.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
We've got one over on Councillor Abbott there. Yeah. Right, yeah. Alan.
Typo is noted, and so we'll sort.
Officers must take these meetings.
Yes.
I didn't write this policy, I'm fine.
I think they're deliberately putting it into testing.
Yes, yeah. Spot the mistake.
Let's go with that.
What about 5G mobile?
I don't believe it's all over the whole district, so I think it would have to be where available.
Okay, yeah. Right. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On the top of page 51, it notes that this is not anymore a new section, and therefore I think it's only fair that we try and put as much weight as we can for connectivity in the rural areas, whilst it notes that it might not always be viable to do so. I think in this day and age, it's absolutely essential that every practicality is sought to allow some type of connectivity to every resident, whether they're rural or otherwise. It's so much dependent on how we live nowadays. I think it's almost like an expected utility, the same as electricity or water connectivity. Having some type of broadband, whether it's doesn't need to be ultra fast, but certainly needs to be super fast to allow residents to be able to live their lives. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that we can do to mandate that or to make that more of a requirement, but I certainly think we should be doing everything we can to ensure that there is some type of connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's no longer a nice to have service. It's really is a must have. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Councillor Parker.
Just to echo that, I mean, it's even more important with this. I think it's called the big switch off, isn't it? Where people are not even going to have a landline.
Yeah. Officers, anything you want to come back on that at all? think it's strong enough not to beef
I
it
mean-
up at all?
The preamble does make it clear that we, I mean, yes, it says it might not be able to be provided in the sort of rural areas, but it does seek to make sure the necessary infrastructure is in place. So when something would become available, then it would be easier to install on a development.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. Nobody else. Right, members. So the recommendations are on page 36. Just briefly on sustainable transport, we're going to add a sentence, I think, to try and just beef up the requirements for road improvements. Parking provision, we're going to remove the Little Yeldham site. Were we also going to tweak the wording in the final paragraph? I can't remember whether we just... Yes, we are. Right, okay. Transport related policy areas, we're going to amend Galleys Corner to read Cressing rather than between Braintree and Cressing. New road infrastructure, add the end date to the A12 DCO. Going to look at the wording in 2.158. Something about, is it Malden Road bypass, the Hatfield Peveril, right, add a sentence in there. And was there something also about Halstead?
Yes, the
bypass?
extent
Yes,
of the road.
yep, well done, good. And then broadband, there's a typo error, and we'll add where available with the 5G. Right, have I got everything? Yeah,
I think so.
jolly good. Right, so could somebody like to move that, please? Councillor Bowes-Flint, Councillor Ritchie seconding. Can I have just a show of hands, please? Thank you, members, that's unanimous. Right, we are now going to have, I think, a little bit of an update from Sarah on where we are.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just sort of doing a bit of a briefing in advance of next week in terms of where we've got to with the highways evidence base and what you can expect next week. So since the deferral of CREST 2101 and CREST 2108, we've been working closely with highways to respond to LPS, the local plan subcommittee concerns. These sites, together with the Coggeshall site, deferred from last week's meeting, will be returning next week. However, it's useful to, as a reminder, to cover the transport evidence base that's being developed to support the local plan review process. So, firstly, this is what the NPPF says in terms of what we are required to do. So, front and centre of paragraph 109, the first thing it says essentially is that we've got to go for this vision-led approach to identifying transport solutions. So there's a definition in the NPPF that says that basically it's an approach to transport planning which is set based on setting outcomes for a development, based on achieving particular transport solutions and modal shift, rather than the sort of basically predict and provide. So it's not about now predicting demand and then providing capacity. It's about giving people a genuine choice of transport options and encouraging them out of their cars. That's what national planning policy requires, whether or not we agree with it and in terms of how achievable it is. That's what we're going to be tested against in the local plan. So then paragraph 111 of the NPPF sets out that planning policy should provide a mix of uses to minimise the number and length of car journeys needed for employment, shopping, leisure, education and other activities. So that's, supporting large-scale new developments means that you can achieve a higher level of facilities within, a larger scheme, which then means that you've got more internalised trips and it's also more likely to support sustainable transport and develop infrastructure which widens transport choices before you look at road mitigation. So in terms of interpreting this into the requirements for an evidence base, this slide sort of sets out what we've got to do. So for Reg 18, we need the sustainability, accessibility, mapping, appraisal of the sites, which is the table I've shown at the previous meetings. So that is where they're giving a score in terms of sometimes existing and proposed, when there's a huge big change or it's just existing, and that's the RAG rating table that you've seen before. We then, as a next stage after that, move to commissioning the transport impact appraisal of 3 spatial options, which tests basically three different allocations across different sites to give comparative data in terms of the cumulative traffic impact. So we might test, obviously we've got the sort of preferred options that members have agreed to test, but there are other sites that potentially have been discounted for other reasons, but should still be tested in terms of their traffic impact on growth. And that could be, you know, extensions to existing settlements in certain places as well as new communities. And this then gives us a sort of a plate for a baseline for what putting growth in places where you've got the best performance overall of sustainability, and then you move on to, after you've got that, you move on to basically what mitigation you might need. So looking at the first, the sustainability accessibility appraisal first. So basically, yes, you're basically looking to identify sites that are sustainable and can achieve a higher uptake in walking, cycling and public transport use. They're going to be more viable where they're next to existing settlements because you're building less footpath and less cycleways to join into the existing network, whereas you might have to do more to more remote sites. So that's the first step in terms of the transport evidence base that we need to do. Then you've got the transport impact appraisal, and you have to do that on multiple options because it's a comparative assessment. We already instinctively know where the hotspots are in transport terms and where the congestion is. It's a question of what are different types of growth going to do to that network and comparing that. And that will be important to the examination. If you don't do that comparison, there's a risk of challenge to soundness of the plan. So sites that have been discounted could come forward and say, you haven't tested us and we are better. So that's why we have to sort of test multiple options. So in terms of what we're expecting from Essex to provide us by next week, they are going to update the sustainability accessibility appraisal in line with the assumptions that we've given them. We've given them those spatial options today, so they are going to update that. And you know that they instinctively, you know, the decisions that have been taken around Kingsdean and Halstead are going to perform well because they are large sites. They can provide their own facilities, and you know they're going to give internalised trips to reduce the volume of trips to from the site on a day-to-day basis. So that is what that evidence should show still. In terms of potential mitigation, sorry, this slide goes on to just say why you can't not provide more than one option and the issue for legal challenge. In terms of potential mitigation, we are at an early stage in terms of mitigation. So ECC's information would refer to schemes that are well known to members, such as Millennium Slips or the dualling of the A120 Braintree to the A12 or rapid transit. These are long-term aspirational things that would be delivered beyond the local plan review period. And what you've got to remember is that the allocations that we're bringing forward, so for example, Kingsdean, it's allocated for 5,000 homes. Those 5,000 homes are not going to be delivered by 2041. They are around 1,800 of them are going to be delivered by 2041, and then many are after. So there is a question of at what point do you need the highways mitigation? You know, when you're testing the traffic impact based on, you know, 2,000 houses versus 3,000 versus 5,000. So there's a question of we're doing the modelling for the level of housing that will be provided by 2041, not by the total quantum, because then there'll be another local plan review coming down the road that will continue to keep that under review. So in terms of the multiple spatial options, I'm mindful that members have made decisions on which sites to include in the draft plan, but hopefully I've explained why you need more than one. And I'm sorry, I've skipped on too many slides. So you need more than one, basically, to minimise this risk of legal challenge, that you've considered multiple spatial options, multiple viable options in delivery terms. So hopefully that explains that. And finally, in terms of Galleys Corner, so I've ruined the build-up by moving on to the slides too much. But essentially, we haven't done the strategic modelling yet. So, you know, we need to do that to understand the cumulative impact of Galleys Corner roundabout. No one development is ever going to provide the solution to Galleys Corner. It just simply is too expensive. And we've got to be proportionate, so that development doesn't have to resolve the existing problem. We know there's a problem with Galleys Corner. That development would have to provide a proportionate level of mitigation. So it's not going to, so allocating it's not going to give you the magic bullet answer to resolving Galleys Corner. It will just be about providing an idea of what can come forward. But at this stage with the Regulation 18, you will just have ideas. They don't have to be costed, deliverable. You know, that is part of the evidence base that will continue to develop as we get to Regulation 19. So I think in short, I would just manage expectations that there's an expectation that Essex are going to give us the answer. They simply aren't, and that's because they don't have to at this stage. But what they are doing is the evidence that is needed to deliver a sound plan.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that is very helpful. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you. And just going back to Kings Dean and the impact on Kelvedon, big concerns were that the existing main street and the roads that join up with that are particularly clogged through Kelvedon and Fearing. Without doing a technical appraisal, the assumption would be that is overcapacity at the moment. So effectively, is a starting point of overcapacity actually factored into the model? It doesn't just start from zero, so to speak.
No, that's right. That may be why we have to come back after Regulation 18 and look at other sites again, because we may find that we can't mitigate the hotspots as we initially thought.
Councillor Bowers.
Regards Galleys Corner, am I right thinking that we are literally back at the start with a blank sheet of paper? Because there was, and I think Councillor Abbott referenced that it wasn't what we needed in regards to the work that was going to be provided as part of the DIY site in Cressin. That was part of the original planning application, that some sort of mitigation was going to be done at Galleys Corner, not at the level that is needed. But am I right thinking that there's been a lot of changes in regards to that application and ownership and that, I believe. Is that any of it? Is there going to be anything, if that comes forward in regards to that site developed, is there anything that's going to come from that now that is going to assist with Galleys Corner, or are we literally back at square one, so literally with nothing being done, no plans or anything? Okay.
So I think with the retail application, I think it's still got an extant permission. Off the top of my head, I think it's still extant. So that could come forward, but the land ownership has changed. And I did have a conversation before the summer with the new landowner, and I think they are looking at that permission afresh, essentially. So I would expect to potentially, I don't have any details because it was a very initial conversation, but I think you could expect to see a change. I suppose the transport assessment work won't have fundamentally changed. They would have to update the transport assessment to say what the existing is and provide the mitigation. So it is still there in the background, but if they come into vary, they're going to have to do the same work again for us to make a decision on anything that revises the proposal.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My concern in all this is that we're becoming, as someone made this point at the last meeting, the lady from Kelvedon, that we talk about policies and decisions without actually being on the ground. We're becoming divorced from what's on the ground. Anyone who lives in this area, as I do, knows the Wisdom Town Centre grinds to a halt, Kelvedon High Street grinds to a halt, the problems at the railway bridge at Rivenhall, Galleys Corner is a nightmare. We all know that. We live with it day to day. They're constantly on the radio, BBC Essex, saying there's congestion. And we also know that any of these large developments, however much we might like to, I'm not going to mention anyone individually, obviously, but however much we like to try and think we're internalising, will generate more traffic in a wider area. So we're going to add to those problems unless we can provide some form of mitigation. And that, I think, from a layman's and woman's term, is what we should be thinking about, as well as the policy side. The other thing that worries me about what Essex County Council is saying, and it comes back to what I said earlier, is it's their preferred route, the A120, but I don't think technically and legally it is the preferred route. And you could interpret that by saying, well, we're just going to allow all these developments to be built along the corridor, so we get we get Route D eventually by having this vast conurbation going all the way from the A12 to Braintree in order to build the thing. And talk about putting the cart before the horse, that is completely the wrong way of doing things. So, not that I'm cynical at all about what Essex County Council says, but I've got severe doubts about this, and I would ask everyone to think about what's on the ground, the day-to-day, because it is a major concern. All of us who are councillors in that area, traffic and transport and congestion is such a big issue. And if we're just going to say, well, we're going to make it worse, hey presto, they're not going to like that.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you. I mean, I'm wearing a different hat tonight. It's not my. I'm not here to explain or defend Essex County Council's approach to these things. They've got to call it as they see it objectively. But Councillor Abbott does make a good point, which could lead to the point of objectivity in terms of evidence. All bits of evidence have to be looked at through an objective lens. And am I right in thinking that between 18 and 19, there will be that opportunity through our process to have that additional objective viewing of our emerging local plan refresh, which may allay some of the concerns, which I think Councillor Abbott may be alluding to, and I totally appreciate where he might be coming from.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I think there's a question around how much debate we should have at this point in time, given that this is sort of laying the groundwork for what we're going to be looking at in more detail next week. I just didn't want you to disappoint you by not saying what Essex have told us so far. Just in terms of, yes, essentially a regulation 18, you could have to, depending on what that throws up, come back with a whole suite of different sites for regulation 19. So, you know, that it is always keeping it under review, under that objective review. But I've got, I understand the point you're making, Councillor Abbott, but it's about, my job is about the delivery of a sound local plan, and that's bringing you back to national planning policy and what we're required to do.
But I think just to confirm, just to give that assurance, there is going to be that level of objectivity expertise in our process that can actually quite rightly question the various representations from the different agencies objectively. Yeah, good, that's good, that's reassuring.
I think, yes, if I've got this right, and this is putting it really basically and very simply, that the ambition should be, with any local plan, to, at an early stage at least, allocate the sites that you feel are going to be the most sustainable at an early stage, with the expectation and the hope that those sites will bring forward the relevant infrastructure and improvements further along the line. That is the expectation, I think. But yeah, you aim to allocate at least as much as you feel an inspector will be comfortable with in order to get your plan found sound. Okay. Any other comments from anyone? No? Well, thank you, members. That brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. I've got no other urgent business. I think that's been really good debate tonight. So I close the meeting at 20 minutes past 8. Thank you very much.
It's early.